Welcome to Your Music Saved Us, where two friends blast ourselves into the past to relive and recontextualize the alternative Christian music we grew up listening to in the 1990s. Joining me to share in our individual regrets and suffering, Jay. How are you doing today?
Great, Clifton. I feel pretty regret-free, at least right now. So we'll see if I still feel that way by the end.
We'll see what we can do about that.
Yeah, thank you.
And also joining us to introduce us to the album we're listening to today is Phil.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, good to have you here.
I'm stoked.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Phil?
Yeah, my name is Phil Vecchio, and I'm basically here because I hassled you guys until you let me come on your show, which I appreciate you conceding to. But I grew up in Southern California, and in and around a lot of the artists you guys have already covered, and I'm sure we'll be covering. And because I wasn't in the middle of, the Midwest or
Right,
Texas
we were in Texas.
Yeah, is that Midwest?
I don't know.
Anyway.
It's Texas.
Texas. I got to see a lot of these bands firsthand. I actually got to do a lot of concert promotion in Southern California. And so as I started listening through your shows, I was like, oh, I can answer that question they don't know. I can do that. Man, these guys got to let me on the show. and here we are. So, yeah, I still do have an independent record label that we put out, releases here and there. We do live stream concerts and stuff now.
Oh, wow.
And I'm stoked to do this. I could go on, but I won't.
Well, cool. Thanks for joining us
Yeah.
here. And we were happy to have you on. And one thing we've always wanted to do is that we obviously know that we have a limited scope in what we listen to at the time, and that there's things outside of that. And so we've always wanted to have other people on to talk about the stuff we missed or just what wasn't our style. Phil, why don't you tell us what are we going to talk about today?
So today we're going to listen to the excellent album by Bloomsday called The Day the Colors Died.
Awesome.
And this came out in 1996, I think, right? Yeah, 1996. Pretty excited.
This album's super easy to find today, right? Like you can just go on Spotify or Apple Music and just...
It's easy for me to find because I go to my carefully alphabetized CD collection and pull it off the shelf. I don't know. I don't really do streaming much, so...
Okay.
It's not easy to find on streaming, I'll say that.
Nope. There is a version on YouTube, which is helpful.
Yep, thank goodness.
So how did returning to this album after all these years make you feel? Or were you returning to it? Have you listened to it along the way?
I've listened to it off and on throughout the years. I mean, it's probably been a couple of years maybe, but, it's in fairly regular rotation around this house. Like, I love it.
Cool.
I'm just going to tell you up front.
Cool.
So.
All right. Well, before we jump in and start talking about more, why don't you tell us a bit about the history of the band?
So... the history of the band is kind of mysterious. You actually came up with a better history than I was able to come up with. I've never really known a lot about them. The biggest connection I had with them, at least before Bloomsday actually, was Blake and Steve from the band. Blake Wescott and Steve Leslie were in a band called Statement of Faith.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they put out one CD before this. It's actually the first place I ever heard them. I had a compilation from Metro One Records called Hi, Here's Our Alternative Compilation. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that one or not?
Oh.
And it had one song by Statement of Faith on it. So that was the first place I ever heard the Blake Wescott vocals and, was intrigued from that point. Never heard anything more of that band. But then, when Bloomsday came out, was able to make that connection back. They're based in Seattle. And that's mostly what I got. I don't want to I don't want to steal the research you found because you found more than I did.
I'll go into it then. Yeah, sure. Of course, as you mentioned, that Blake was in a Statement of Faith along with Steve Leslie, although their album says that Statement of Faith is Blake and I forget who the other person was, but Dan Wolf. Sorry, yes, there we go. Yep, it's on my list here too. And it was self-published; it was not on a label. Leslie played in it, but he wasn't listed as a member of the band. So that's interesting. Leslie was also a founder of the group Resistance, which was kind of a prog rock / goth band. That's what I read. That put out an album in 1994 that was self-titled. That's the only more research I got than you for.
Yeah, there's not a lot of information about them out there.
course, as you said, this was they signed to Brainstorm at some point, and we got this album. Although not sure how a lot of that happened.
I mean, Clifton, one thing you did send me, you said that Gene Eugene, from Brainstorm, saw them perform live and then just offered them a recording contract on the spot.
Yeah.
Now, where he saw them, who knows?
That was just from some random guy who was selling a CD, and he was given like a history of the band, and but it's more than I have for other places.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, it sounds good.
Yeah, sure. Something like that had to have happened. All right, what did Statement of Faith sound like?
It was probably a little more poppy than this, but definitely had the same. I mean, the vocals are unmistakable, and
really,
again, I only heard that one song from them. I never got the whole album, but yeah, a little bit more poppy, a little bit more like early 90s-y sound,
Yeah. On Discogs, they're listed as being world music, and that world music from the 90s scares me because that's there's a lot of weird things.
I would not describe it as that. It's just a little more jangly, like early 90s rock.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, definitely not world music.
All right, so Phil, when did this album come into your life?
So it was shortly after it came out, probably late 96 or early 97. I don't know the exact day, but it was however long it took for the local Christian bookstore to dump it into the bargain bin. Basically, I was, you guys have kind of touched on this before, but I was, poor high school student and had very limited funds to buy stuff. And so EPs, compilations, and bargain bin was kind of my go-to.
Mm-hmm.
And when I saw this in there and I recognized that Brainstorm logo on there, I had a few, compilations from them previous, like Biscuits and probably Browbeats by that point. And I was like, yeah, I got to check these guys out. And plus, just a glance at that artwork, with pills on the front. And I'm like, this is something different from what the other stuff in this Christian bookstore is. So I picked it up.
Yeah, I can definitely remember that the album cover got my attention at the time and had me sitting down to listen to the album, at least. Yeah.
And I don't know, I'm maybe getting sidetracked a little bit, but I don't know if you guys had more than one Christian bookstore in your town, but we did. And there were the ones that kind of were known for their music selection that you would go to. But then there are the other ones that really weren't. But the bargain bin there usually would be great because no one came in there to buy that stuff. Yeah, and this stuff quickly got relegated to there, and you could just come in and score. Or they would sell the old demo tapes, those kind of things too. And so, yeah, it was pretty wonderful. You just had to know where to go to find the stuff.
Yes, same exact thing in my hometown where yeah, the Christian, there was a Christian bookstore where you went for the better selection, but then you would find the really weird stuff in the bargain bin at the other one. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. We had to drive a little further. It's weird because I did grow up in Southern California, but we were in a little mountain ski community in Southern California. And so we didn't have the bookstore. We had to drive a couple hours to get to them.
Oh, wow.
Which is kind of how I started getting into music, and promoting it and stuff because there was nothing going on in my little town. So I would bring the bands to us.
On your first experience with this, what was it? Love at first sight? Did it take you a while to get into it? How did it? Yeah, how'd you feel about it at the time?
I instantly fell in love with it. It was instantly became a part of the regular rotation. Again, the presentation with the minimal liner notes and stuff, just it created this sort of mystery around them because I'd never seen them. I'd seen a lot of these bands that were in the store and I've never seen them, hadn't read a lot about them. And then there's no lyrics and there's this almost empty, liner notes inside. And yeah, it was intriguing and I just musically loved it. And it just felt this is where it felt like it was very contemporary to a lot of the other, indie rock or whatever you want to call it around at that time,
Yes.
Emo-ish stuff, I guess.
Yeah, probably more so than most of the other things that were being sold in the Christian bookstore, even in the alternative section. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's something that I often think about, that kind of the mystery that surrounded so many bands back in the 90s and the early 2000s even, is that today you literally can't, if you go to Spotify and you want to be an artist on Spotify, you have to upload a picture of the band, with faces, right? Mm-hmm. Back then, we knew nothing. It was, the mystery was kind of part of the, it created a mystique, right? It was just part of the the feel of this thing where sometimes you just didn't know anything. Sometimes you just had this album that came out of nowhere and never went anywhere. But it just, I think there's a unique appreciation when there's that much mystery to something where you can't go and say, well, this person was going through this in their life, so they probably wrote this based on that, which is fun. But when you don't have that, you're just it's a completely different experience of experiencing the music.
Absolutely. That mystique. I'm the kind of guy, I don't know if you guys are, like, I'll read every part of the liner notes. I'll pour through every name on the thank you list to see, like, oh, these guys know that band. That makes sense how this guy was recording here, blah, blah. Like, I would study every single aspect of it and get to know that, like, I knew more about the bands than they knew probably, So, yeah, having that mystery and trying to dig into it and solve it, it just added to the whole experience.
Yes. Did this play a role in your life? Did it shape any part of your life? Did it change the music that you liked? Anything like that?
I mean, I don't think it changed it. I was very much into this, scene already, but I listened to it a lot with my then girlfriend, now wife. And so, I mean, it was one of those that was in constant rotation around our dating time. So, like, when I popped it in recently, she's like, oh, I love this album. Just like instant triggers there. So that's about it. I don't think it changed anything, but it was definitely just a cool album that was listened to a lot.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Jay, did you have any experience with this album at the time?
So I remember seeing it. I didn't own it. I may have heard it once or twice. The one thing I do remember about Bloomsday is I had a Velvet Blue music compilation with a song off their EP after this, a song called Tuesday to Thursday that I absolutely loved. For some reason though, I never bought that EP, never bought this album. It's just at the time, I guess I was into other stuff or forgot about it. But that was my only experience with Bloomsday was that song, and I still love that song. In fact, I just sent it to you, Clifton, I think yesterday or the day before. Like, you got to hear this. So definitely Bloomsday was like a positive, positive connotation in my mind. I just hadn't really heard anything else.
Was that comp in your Christian bookstore, or did you get that through mail order type stuff?
Oh, that's a good question. Because I feel like this is really side trip. I feel like Velvet Blue initially had a few albums that were kind of like in bookstores and kind of not, but then really stopped.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Or I picked it up maybe because I went to Cornerstone that summer in '96, and maybe I picked it up there. I don't know. Somewhere I got a hold of a Velvet Blue compilation that had that song.
Cool. Yeah, I don't remember Velvet Blue stuff being in bookstores. Phil, do you remember that?
We had them in Southern California, but it's very possible it's because
just local.
The bookstore I went to was a few miles from his house, So
oh, nice.
I'm not sure how widely it was distributed beyond that, but I always ordered my VBM stuff directly from those awesome light blue mailers you would send out. There was nothing like seeing that light blue paper show up in the mail, and I'm like, oh, what's going to be new this month? This is why I don't do streaming stuff, because I have such fond memories tied to physical things, like going to a piece of paper and then sending a check in the mail to someone, or holding a CD in my hand and reading a liner. You can't do that when you're on Spotify. It's not the same.
It's true.
No, it's true. It's a very different experience, and it's lacking something. I agree. All right, well, let's jump into this album. And Phil, why don't you tell us a little bit about The Day the Colors Died?
All right, so this is, the opening track, the title track. And I mentioned here, I know it's kind of lame to have track one as your favorite song, but and the title track no less, but it is. It's my favorite song on the album.
Yeah.
Again, because there was no lyrics with this, I never really knew. In fact, for the whole album, I never really knew what this album was about. It was not one that I would sing along with, more just kind of listen to it as a whole. So I just liked, the feel of this song, and there's colors or something they're singing about. I don't know. I always thought it was about drugs because that's what was on the front cover. It's kind of what I thought most of this album was about. So I don't know if that's correct or not, but
that's pretty good.
Could be.
This song is so good that literally I listened to this song at the time, but I never got into the rest of the album, which is why I didn't really have an experience with the rest of the album. So when we came to do this episode, I literally set this song aside, and it was the last. I didn't do it until yesterday. I didn't listen to the song again until yesterday because I wanted to experience the rest of the album without this song to see if this song is kind of poisoning the rest of the album with how, because it's not just so good, but it's also just so different, right? Whereas we'll talk about what the rest of the album sounds like later, but this one has more of like a driver 8 or puller sound to me than it does even the rest of the album.
I could definitely hear that.
Yeah.
I agree with both of you. This is my favorite song on here too, I think. To me, it feels like the most kind of like, I don't know if fully formed is the right way to... maybe it just sounds a little more mature than some of the other ones. Mm-hmm. I kind of wonder if it was maybe like one of the last songs they wrote for this, like, you know, more recently when they recorded this. Because we'll talk about Just the Same in a minute, but that one I think is probably one of their earliest songs, just the style of it. And this one sounds much more developed. I also like, listening to this whole album, I got this sense, but this song especially, like, I would have loved to see this live, because it actually really gets loud in parts, but maybe it's the way this album's mixed, or maybe just because his vocals are still kind of smooth and soothing sounding. You could forget how loud it actually is. I don't know, in the mix or something, but I think live it would really hit you, these different parts in here.
We kind of talked about this when we talked about the Merbabies, Jay, is that there's a lot of fuzzy guitars in this album. And that 90s style of mixing them kind of into the background, whereas live they would have just been hitting you in the face, is very interesting. And this song has that too. I mean, this song has some fuzzy, delicious guitars that just sit right in the background, and they don't take over the song, but they just provide this like chill feel throughout the song, and it's black and white. Pretty great.
And I can confirm too, because I interned with Jackson Rubio for a while in college.
Oh, cool.
Did a lot of sound for Merbabies, and those songs hit like in a totally different way live. Like, and it makes me like like you said, I would love to have seen Bloomsday, because you can just tell those shows were intense, especially some of those like those punchy like chugga things they do.
Yeah.
It's very subtle on the mix here, but I know live it was huge.
Yeah, and there's some really nice drum parts on this song, especially that just really like there's a little drum fill that brings us into the chorus. It's not even big. It's just like those few hits on the ride cymbal. It was never mine. Black and it's just, I don't know. There's something gorgeous about it that takes you into the chorus there.
Yeah.
And understated, maybe that's the word I'm looking for here.
The drums are kind of busy on this album. Like, I noticed them in some other songs too, when I really was kind of listening to different parts, and not in a bad way, but they're doing quite a bit when you start kind of tuning in to that part. Phil, I agree with you. One other part I liked is kind of when he's, I don't know if it's a chorus or whatever, but there's kind of like a breakdownish part when he says, and I think this is what he's saying because we don't have the lyric sheet, but when he says like, why find yourself into me now? It's like that kind of got that chugga like guitar in there. It's
it's got the really squirrely guitar here.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the song goes out on those same squilling guitars.
He's got like some kind of fiddly stuff in the background towards the end, and the distortion stuff that I really, really like. And again, I think I scoured YouTube for videos. Now, a band called Bloomsday, there's lots of stuff on there that has nothing to do with this band, but I could not find any. Yeah. If anyone listening has any videos of this or any of the other bands we've talked about that have no videos up, please upload them, because this would be cool to see.
Agreed. Do we want to try to break down these lyrics? Because
it's either drugs or a breakup song. It's got to be one of those two.
I agree. It's one of those two. To me, the colors dying almost seems like a reference to like a light depression, where like everything's kind of losing its taste and interesting qualities, and that he's kind of like, what I find really interesting is that he's like personified it, where the colors dying is something the colors are doing, actively doing to him, like because they don't love him anymore. Yeah.
I mean, to me, I prefer a lyric that makes you think and maybe you don't really know what it's about.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
That to me, that's good songwriting or lyric writing to me. You know,
yes,
I like it.
Agreed. And yeah, this song and really this whole album, we'll see that the lyrics are really aimed, I think, more around creating emotional response than telling a story or making something blatantly obvious. Yeah.
I also really like to, again, not knowing what it means, but that talks about the colors dying, and then it's, black and white as opposed to all the colors. And then the artwork, the front cover is very monochrome. The inside is, similarly, just a couple colors, but then you've got the hyper saturated artwork on the flip side, of all the paper and, in the band photos. And it's just a really cool juxtaposition. I don't know what it means, but I love how it all fits together. They had a really clear overall artistic, goal or vision in mind.
Yeah.
I love that they put it all together.
And it could just be cost, but I do love that like the one side that's just like the picture of the spilled pills is in black and white, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it is cheaper to print in black and white, so maybe that's it, but also it works really well.
Yeah, they took that limitation and made it into an artistic statement.
Exactly. And that's always the best art. Let's move on then. I could say something about every song on this album, by the way, because we're going to skip Patience here, but it's a really good song. I like it a lot. All right.
Yeah, I only skipped some because you said I had to,
right.
And I even went one more than you said I should, but it was hard, to eliminate.
I
skipped some of the longer ones.
I said 5 or so.
Or so. 6 is or so.
Yes, exactly. 7 is too many. 4 is probably too few.
Sweet spot. 6.
Yep. All right. And so we're going to skip on to Just the Same. Why are we talking about this one?
So I wanted to mention this one because I think Jay, you said it's definitely seems a little more primitive, a little older style than some of their other stuff. Mm-hmm. It's probably my least favorite song on the album. I still love it. It's still, good and it fits in there. But when you're looking at it as an individual track, it's probably, one of the weaker ones. Although it's one of the few parts I do sing along with, is that chorus, because you can recognize what he's saying there.
Yeah.
Which may or may not be a good thing,
Well, I know it's just the same, so I won't hide shame. But my pain you will receive, so will you, I must believe.
Yeah, it's a little more jangly than the rest of it, and I like jangle pop, and this song annoys me. like there, I don't know, there's something about that guitar, like, and here we go, you ready for this guitar? I hate that.
Yeah.
It also is probably the song that's the most similar to their Statement of Faith stuff, which definitely tracks, like you were saying, with that progression. So
yeah, I even went to Statement of Faith on Discogs to see if this song, like if this was just re-recorded from that album. It was not on their previous album, but I thought maybe.
But it sounds just the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's funny. Okay.
Sorry, I'm a dad.
Took me a second.
Also, it to me seems the most upfront Christian-y lyrics on this album too. I mean, I guess some of the other ones are as well, but this one is just really like no question what he's talking about with that.
This was their attempt to get airplay on radio for sure on the Christian radio station.
Whereas the first song was their attempt to get airplay on not Christian stations.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I think, could have worked if someone had just sent it to the right people, probably.
Yeah. And there's one, I mean, again, depending on, where you're coming from with like belief system is one thing, but just lyrically alone, the line "in you I must believe," that's kind of cheesy. Like, no matter who's saying it, like that's because a lot of the stuff, the other songs we'll talk about, like where it is a little more Christian-y, the way it's delivered, first of all, I never would have known. And second of all, it sounds cool when he says it.
Yeah.
In you, I must believe, even he can't quite make sound cool.
Yeah. That line sounds like a pocket change line to me.
Well, and let me read you the whole thing so the listeners know. He says, well, I know it's just the same. Still, I wallow in my shame, but my pain you will receive. So in you, I must believe. Yeah. Ouch. Like the lyrics are better on every song. Besides this one, I don't know what. Again, it feels like, oh, you need to have 10 songs on this album. You only got 9. Let's put one of those older ones on there, and we're done.
Did they need 10 songs? Because I mean, it's plenty long.
It's a long album. It's funny because I've always listened to this album like as a whole, and not thinking. I don't usually think of it as separate songs because it's just sort of like one big piece. Mm-hmm. So when we sat down and I was looking at this for this podcast, I didn't know the songs were so long. I had no idea. I just thought of it as an album I listened to. Like 11 minutes, 9 minutes. That's
6.5 minutes. Yes, there's some long songs.
They bleed into each other a lot. Yeah.
Speaking of a long song, I think Jay wanted to talk about Song of Five.
I did. Mostly the lyrics, but we could talk about the music for a minute too. Go ahead, Cliff. It's not a bad song.
No, musically. I think it's great. And even this, the opening guitar lick, which I really like here. That's really great, I think.
Yeah.
It is really slow, though, and I think that one of the things this album suffers from is being a little too slow overall. Other than what we just talked about, just the same, which is not the best song in this album. It's probably the worst song in this album. Not all the songs are slow. There's at best, we get some medium tempo songs.
Which is why it works so well as a big listen to it as a chunk in the background.
Yes.
Yep.
While you're on a date album, as opposed to I'm going to throw this on at the youth group and get all the kids dancing.
Yeah. Also not like a driving album, for example, because you would drive right off the road. Whether that's because you fell asleep or because you're ready to end it all. One of those two reasons is going to take you off the road. Though. End it all because it's a sad album, not because you're tired of the album. All right, Jay, talk about the lyrics here.
I just want to point out one other thing I like about the song is that intro that you played is the exact same way the song ends, too. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of nice. The song really builds, it gets loud and everything, and then it ends back with that same part you played, which is kind of a cool way to do it. Yeah, so we don't have the lyrics, and we did our best to try to transcribe them.
And to take a break there, Phil did the first pass at all these lyrics except for this song, I think, and that was a heroic feat. Thank you, Phil.
Yeah, thank you, Phil.
No guarantees on the accuracy, but
sure.
I did my best.
I made some things that I thought, I put some things in there that I thought it said, but yeah, you without your scaffolding there, it would have been almost impossible to try this.
It took a while.
So, in this song, the first part, I'm not sure what he's talking about, but he does say in there, I awoke from something like a dream, only asking what all can it mean? And he says, now you whisper in my ear, now you speak it so clear. And then he says, I'm awake, I hear the answer. I'm assuming he's talking about God and all that when he says you whisper. But then he says, I am safe, I can hear my master. And when I heard that word master, I was like, huh, interesting, because I don't think we've heard that word yet in any of the albums we've covered, right?
I think you're right.
Yeah. We hear bands use the word Lord a lot, which is kind of close, but we haven't heard master. And Clifton, let me ask you, if God is your master, then what does that make you?
Oh, slave, obviously.
Right. So, to me, that's kind of problematic. I started thinking more about it.
Or servant, in a British sense.
Okay, all right, fair.
I think that's a very American, understanding of the language, because Lord and Master are very similar words, right? So, and yeah, Lord just means someone who rules over someone else. So it could just mean subject, even.
All right, fair. Okay, so I'm a teacher and I teach, U.S. history. So I guess I'm thinking when I hear master, I'm like kind of like red flags kind of thing. And I'm thinking, I will tell you, if you Google master-slave relationship, you'll get a lot of BDSM stuff, which is new to me. I didn't know that was kind of a thing. But if you dig a little more, you can find some stuff. And I guess part of me, and allow me to go on a little sidetrack here, and again, you guys this may be wrong, but if you think about the history of our country, up until about the Civil War, we had about 200 years of like master-slave relationships, and I kind of think we have to be careful when we throw around the word master, just because it can kind of put you in that. And I did find online, I thought this was pretty interesting. I found an article just kind of talking about that relationship and how it's referred to in the Bible. And, Paul talks about like, slaves and how they relate to their masters and all that stuff. I'm going to quote part of this. It is from somebody named Alex Honho-Ip is his name. And it's in a journal called Scrinium, and it's called A Christian Response to the Conflicting Relationship Between Slave and Master in a Christian Household. Just allow me just to point out a couple of things that I thought he did a really good job of saying, like, this is why this is maybe problematic. He said, slavery isn't about an objectifying relationship. It's like the economic essence of a slave. The purpose of objectifying is clear, since by objectifying the slave, the master can gain the maximum return from it by using it or selling it. The reason for objectifying a slave is to make it a product that can be sold. Only a product can generate and store value. So you're kind of objectifying somebody and commodifying them. And another thing he talks about in the article is a manipulating relationship, right? Like, he says it refers to the way and underlying motives behind giving certain room for humanity towards slaves are mainly driven by the master's self-interest in the economic concern, which is in conflict with the fundamental Christian teaching of loving your neighbor as yourself. I won't quote everything, but people would, with slaves, for instance, they would falsely promise them, like, okay, if you do this and this, you'll get your freedom. Mm-hmm. And they would never give it to them. I don't know if you guys ever watched the TV show What We Do in the Shadows, but Guillermo always thinks he's going to get turned into a vampire, and that's why he wants to help them, but he never does. It's just like that kind of continuing thing. But I don't know. I don't want to get... I know I'm like derailing everything, but I think it's important to think when we use that word master, because that master-slave relationship is like the opposite of like trust and love, which is what you would want to have in a relationship. It's objectification, it's commodification, it's manipulation. And so, I don't know, I heard that and I was just like, whoa! And it made me think about like growing up. We didn't say that a lot in church, but it wasn't completely foreign. Mm-hmm. And I think back and I'm like, okay, I'm a white male. I have a feeling if I'd grown up black in a black church, we wouldn't be throwing this around, so quickly and saying things that way. And it just, I don't know, I thought more about that as I listened to some of the other songs on this album, and I thought, oh man, if you're referring to God as your master, that's not the same kind of relationship he wants to have with him in some of these other songs, where he wants him close and wants to feel trust and love. Like, to me, and even if you're thinking of it servant master, to me that doesn't feel like the same type of relationship is like a loving God father type thing. Maybe I'm completely off, guys. I don't know. That's my little tangent. But anyway, there we are.
I think there's some valid points in there, to be sure. I still think, though, that, like, I doubt that was his intention in that.
Sure.
Whether or not that word choice is, good, especially if it holds up now. But, like, when Alfred calls Bruce Wayne Master Wayne, I don't think he's thinking in that way. Again, that's the British way of it, but it may be a poor word choice now, but I don't think that was the original intention anyway.
Fair. And we do this all the time. I'm like picking on something this guy wrote like 25 years ago when he was probably like 22 years old. Like, I said crazy stuff then too. I just like, it just made me think, and even how we would throw around the word Lord and stuff, which is kind of a really interesting thing that we would always say about God, but it's very antiquated, right? You don't use that language anywhere else in your life, and just makes you think about, like, you're wanting this relationship with God, but you're referring to him in this really impersonal way that doesn't imply a lot of trust and what, I don't know. It's more that I need to break down probably beyond this episode, but it's interesting the language we used. You know,
it brings to mind a lot of the stuff that we said that, you know, growing up in church, you heard all these words, whether they're offensive or just weird, that you would use only in that context. And then it makes it weird for everyone else.
Yeah.
Who you're having a conversation with or writing lyrics for. Like, you don't talk that way. But when you are writing lyrics, even outside of like Christian music, they use a lot of words that, you know, you don't normally use because it's music and you're trying to make it fit into the meter or whatever. So
Yeah.
True.
just, again, like, I don't disagree with you, but just in defense of probably, you know, young Blake was not thinking this, I'm a slave now.
No, and I don't think he was either. Yeah, it just made me kind of think more about, man, that was, you know, I can remember kind of using that, and gosh, I didn't really think about what that was really saying when we throw that around. So
I would recommend against it now.
Yeah, probably not the best thing to be.
Well, but yeah, you're even right with the word Lord though, because and you know, American Christians especially only use that word in reference to one thing, and so it's lost all meaning in the sense of what it once meant. You know, you know, because as you said, it's not a personal relationship. You don't. A subject doesn't have a personal relationship with their king, even if we're looking at that, right?
Right.
You know, or if it's not even on a king, maybe it's something more local. But you still don't have that personal relationship. So, yeah, it is a very impersonal thing. So that's very interesting. I think that, you know, especially I think even more today, where there's much more emphasis put on individuality in conservative evangelical Christianity, where if you actually sat down and went over that relationship with some people, they would bristle at it. You know, they would not be comfortable with that relationship.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, thank you for allowing my aside.
Yeah. We're gonna skip Blue Poetry, even though it's it's kind of a beautiful song. Another long one. This one's over 9 minutes long. And we're going to go on to Vitamin. So, Phil, why don't you introduce us to Vitamin?
All right. So this one opens up, and Clifton, you have a lot better music words that you use, but it almost feels like a waltz at the beginning. Am I like totally off on that? Like, that's what it feels like.
So that's interesting. Let's play a little bit of that here, because I went in a completely different direction. You're right, it does, yeah. Mostly, it just reminded me of Sunny Day Real Estate.
Oh,
okay.
So the Clifton, can you pull up another? Are you able to pull up another song? Can you pull up "In Serenading" by Mineral? Because I swear the beginning of that song sounds like this song to me.
Yeah, of course.
A little bit. When I played it later, I was like, I wanted to see what you guys think. I mean,
yeah, it has the same da 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 break 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 kind of thing to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not as much of a waltz as Phil was saying.
Yeah, it's not as
like
waltzy, and I hadn't heard the waltz till you said it, but now that it makes sense.
Interestingly enough, that Mineral song was 2 years later, so maybe they
Yep.
were
Yes.
biting
I
off
know.
of
Who
Bloomsday,
knows?
you know. I don't know.
More than likely, they're both just huge fans of Sunny Day Real Estate.
Yeah, that's
this is true.
more basically. Yeah.
But I think that they do this a lot in a lot of the songs in this album, but I love the way that the dynamics where it's real mellow and it kind of like builds up and then you get a great like noisy chorus and soaring vocals. Just that.
Mhm.
I love that.
Forgets the others there, so that in time I can feel your kind. I tell you, I
I mean, I realize that describes like pretty much every like 90s emo song ever, but they do it great.
They do.
And I really like it in the song.
Yeah.
Also, I feel like those vocals on this song, like it's so passionate. Like I would love to have seen him do this live because I feel like even in the studio, he's able to just get this emotion across
hmm
that is just so intense. And I think this is another song about drugs.
I hadn't considered that, but let's come back to that. That's very interesting.
It's called Vitamin.
It's called Vitamin.
I
You're
mean,
right. Like I was staring at the title right when you said that, and I was like, "Oh yeah." Yeah. So one thing that I want to talk about on this song is this is not the first song that this is obvious on in the album. It's the first one we're talking about where it's really obvious. And like I said, this is just highly Sunny Day Real Estate influence to me. From the vocals to the guitars, everything sounds like Sunny Day. I mean, I don't want to say it's a direct ripoff of Sunny Day Real Estate, but if there's a song on this album that's the most direct ripoff of Sunny Day Real Estate, it's this one. The other ones, the earlier songs on the album sound very influenced by Sunny Day Real Estate, but don't sound like a ripoff. This one does sound like this one could be a Sunny Day Real Estate song. I will say that Blake, in his vocals, pulls it off wonderfully. He has, these long kind of whiny vocals that appear throughout this song, that very similar to how Jeremy does, and especially when you get to the end where the lyrics, it's in the bridge. He says, "I can't place it, I hold it, life." But yeah, he yeah. And interestingly, it's also the same word that Jeremy kind of pulls one of his nice vocal riffs on the Poor Old Lou Straight Six song.
I was wondering. I thought of that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
Yep.
Good connection.
Good find there.
Yeah.
It's funny. My notes just say, "Yeah, this is a pretty emo sounding song."
So,
and I did note. I said, "I wish they could make the louder parts even louder."
Mhm.
Like, that's my one thing on this album. I don't know how to. I don't know how to they record this stuff, but I would love it to just be more intense. Those
Mhm.
loud parts, because I think live this would have been something to behold.
Yeah.
That ending with a like stop start part.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like,
Dun-dun-dun. Yeah.
oh
yeah.
yeah, that hits so good.
And Jay, I'm really there with you on. First off, I think this band needed another guitarist. Like they need another layer of guitars going on. They often do, but like just because it's double tracked, they don't have that live, right? The way the album is mixed, you can feel that the energy is there. And I went back and listened to Sunday Real Estate after listening to this, just to see what the difference was recorded. Because first off, the drummer on this band is good, but he's not as good as the Sunday Real Estate drummer. That guy is insanely good, and he's able to bring just this ridiculous energy, which I think is how a lot of Sunday Real Estate gets their recorded sound is just through his energy, and he's not perfect, right? There's some imperfections in his playing that are very interesting, but also there's just something with the mixing here where they never let those guitars roar forward, you know?
Yeah.
And that holding back really is disappointing on the album because you know it's there, right? And it's part of what makes this album not work in a way because it's very even. The whole album's very even. There's no huge moments in this album, and I think those lack of huge moments are because they never let that come out in the guitars, and the drums are there to put on top of it, but it's just not. I don't know. It's not there.
I can see that it has like a very eveny, it's even across the board.
Mhm.
Like, but when you're listening closely, you've got those headphones on.
Yeah.
The dynamics are there, and had it been mixed differently, I think just a remix of the stuff they recorded could really make it pop even that much more.
Possibly
Good point.
so.
Who knows where those tracks are these days?
Right.
If they're anywhere, yeah, because it was like months after this that Brainstorm ceased to exist.
Yeah.
Although I'm going to argue with you here, Jay, about the emo thing.
Okay.
Even though there's a lot of Sunday Real Estate here, Sunday Real Estate took emo and added a lot of indie rock into it and a little bit of grunge. I think we're hearing everything but the emo from the Sunday Real Estate, from the Sunday Real Estate influence.
Okay.
I think we're hearing a very Sunday Real Estate sound that's mostly their indie rock and a little bit of grunge sound.
Yeah, overall, I wouldn't call this album emo, but
No.
there's a couple of songs that this is one of them that I kind of thought.
And it flirts with
all
it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think we're getting the other parts of Sunday Real Estate here, not so much the emo part. And there's some more great fuzzed out guitars on this song. They're straight out of the 90s. Of course, it's from the 90s. And what I love about this is the bass really pulls it along because the guitars are so fuzzed out that what we're hearing is actually just a speaker crackling because it's being overfed. Like there's just too much being forced into the speaker that we're just hearing a speaker crackle and make noise. Like if it wasn't for the bass, we wouldn't hear notes, I think we should get into the lyrics though, because I think this is some of the best vocals. And even though the lyrics are really light on this one, I think they do a really good job of evoking a feeling.
Well, I mentioned earlier that I thought it was about drugs, and a part of it is vitamin, and obviously the artwork, hints at that. But also, there's that line, sometimes it's sugar that I need. He's talking about things he's craving, and I feel like maybe it's struggling with that, addiction or something. I don't know, but that's my guess.
Interesting. So, what are your lyrics for that verse? And this is me building off of your lyrics. But I have sometimes it's sugar that I need, for it's the others that, so that in time I can feel your kind.
That's pretty much what I had. I looked at yours and I kind of like merged it with mine, listened again, and did my best. And it's more or less that.
Yeah,
which
doesn't make any sense.
Sentence, but no,
it's parts of sentences, but it's not anything in and of itself.
But it's sugar that he needs, and then there's others that he can feel their kind sometimes. Other drugs. I tell you, I won't lie. If you find me lost inside, slowly recovering where I fell, I mean, he's like falling apart. And, it's withdrawals.
Yep.
Or something else.
Something like that.
Well, and in the next song, either he or Pablo talks about being high. So,
yes.
It does work.
Pretty sure, yeah. Yeah.
As Phil said, this whole album may be about drugs, so it's hard to say.
It could be.
I mean, also the lyrics on this one are a little bit emo, lost inside.
Yeah.
All that kind of stuff.
There's plenty of that throughout
Yeah.
a lot of the lyrics here. Yeah.
Yeah. And I really like the slowly recover where I fell line.
Yeah.
The lyric itself and the way it comes across in the song is great.
But as a teenager, like when I first got this,
Mhm.
hearing those things like this, or later on we hear like "Save Me from Myself," all that kind of stuff, I was like, yes, this is exactly how I feel every day.
Yeah.
Yep.
I
Yeah.
need to hear
Totally.
this, you know.
Totally. Yep.
Especially if you find me lost inside, that can be like lost inside myself or something like that,
Yeah.
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 Which is a very teenagery thing to do.
Yeah.
Agreed.
This album feels like when I was 16,
Mhm.
basically.
Yep.
Entirely.
And today a little bit. Whether that be the pandemic or what. But
Yeah. True.
all right. Well, let's move on to Pablo's diary then.
Who's Pablo?
Yeah.
Who is Pablo and what did he write in his diary?
Yeah, that was in my notes too.
Yeah.
Pablo Picasso? That's kind of like the big one I came up with, but
Interesting.
I don't see any connection there.
I just figured it was a friend.
Is he getting high on God? Like what's going on with Pablo in this?
And is he saying I get high? That's what I think it is, but it could be I get something else. I don't know.
I always thought it was I get by, but I think you're right.
Uh-huh.
It's definitely I get high.
think so.
I mean, I've listened to it over and over again, and I separated the vocals, from this, and I only hear I get high.
Well, okay, so question, because Clifton, you definitely have more like direct musical knowledge. What's that bass, the way the bass sounds, it sounds like it's a synth or it's one of those like 80s, metal bands when they would do a ballad, they would have this bass. Like, what does that sound?
Let's listen to it.
What I see, I don't want to be.
So my first notes for this song are, I do not like the bass on this song.
Really?
It really ruins the beginning.
So it's a sort of jazzy bass with a lot of bends, and so what it is a bass guitar, and he's doing some quick mutes, and then there's some bends in there that are getting those other sounds. And it's funny because before I even got into the lyrics of this, I described those as drags off of a cigarette kind of bass.
I could see that.
It's kind of chill, it's kind of jazzy, but there's also this like weird there's also this weird like tension to it.
Yeah, but I feel like the beginning of that song, I could hear a Bloomsday song following it, or it could be like Michael Bolton singing later on, or anything like that.
Totally.
Does not tell me what this rest of this album.
It doesn't, but it works really well.
I think it does. That's an interesting.
So Jay doesn't like this one. That's funny because either this one or Vitamin is my second favorite song on the album. It's just these are both.
I like it once I get past that, but
Okay.
at the beginning I'm like, meh,
Yeah, but you're right. If you just listen to that bass, it could easily just be. I mean, it could just be like, some of like those dime a dozen like bass or jazz albums. I mean, it could be almost anything at that point.
But it does kick in quite a bit more as the song progresses.
Mhm.
We get a little more distorted guitar. I like how in this one, like, there's parts where the distortion is like around like 2.5 minutes in, where there's like distorted guitars, but it's like way back in the mix. It almost sounds like they're in another room with like some distorted guitars, and I like that effect. I don't know, it just is really cool.
Yeah, I have that moment here noted too. Let's play that. Just that super fuzzy guitar, and it sounds really cool in the back there, but there's also part of you that just wants that to just turn it up. Just let us rock out to this, Like,
I could see that.
It should be wall of sound, but it isn't for some reason. Very disappointing.
There's a part on this, and I didn't write down the time, but where things kind of cut out and the guitar kind of builds up like dun 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 dun. It reminds me a lot of Hole by Pedro the Lion. There's a part in that song that kind of does the same thing, like dun, 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 dun. I listened to it. It's not exactly the same, but you know, and that
That was
one
like
came
the
after
same year
this.
too, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, or maybe right after this or something. And I know they
Yeah.
were buddies because Blake played in Pedro the Lion after
Yeah.
this, so
Yeah.
there may have been a direct connection there. But
Played
anyway.
drums. One of the many drummer casualties of Pedro the Lion.
Yeah, he also played. Well, we'll talk more about it. He played
Yeah.
guitar with them on at least one or two of the tours too.
With
So-
David Bazan, not with Pedro.
Yo, yeah,
is
sorry.
later,
Yes, you're
yeah.
right.
I know. Gotta get technical here.
Details. Now at the end when he's like singing, like, I don't know, I think it's a bridge. It's one of the closest spots he gets to actually yelling on this album. I think
Mhm.
like when he's like really real gravelly on it, and I like that.
The forgive me, Father, please.
Yeah.
Father, please. Father, I deserve everything I have tried. You, I know.
Yeah, and that's kind of the loudest they ever let the guitar get on this album until the last song, which does get crazy again.
Mhm.
And there's more than just a guitar going on there. There is that guitar rocking out, but there's another guitar doing like pick slides and other like weird noises in the background as well. So I'm gonna break in here for a second. See if you can notice how many different tracks are layered on top of each other. First, I'm gonna play for you the left stereo, and then I'm gonna play for you the right stereo channel. That's just beautiful. It's kind of adding to the tension and the feel of it, yeah. And they do that on the last song again too, by the way.
The first time I heard this, I thought somebody was even like screaming in the background, like way in the background.
Yeah.
And then I went back and listened really closely, and they're not. But I swear, sometimes I still feel like I can hear it in there right at that part.
That'd be interesting. Huh.
Yeah, just really faint, kind of in the background.
Yeah.
So.
And then I noticed at the very end of the song, as it's trailing off, I'm pretty sure there's a little like synth kind of dragging out into the fade out, which
Let's
I don't know if I could identify that through the rest of the song or not.
let's listen to it. Okay. I'm gonna turn the volume up as it fades out.
Real high pitch there, kind of.
Yeah, it may just be feedback, but
It could be, but it almost sounds like a little.
it's a nice little drone though.
Yeah.
And who knows, that drone may exist through most of the song. That's a very popular thing to do, especially in the 90s, of adding those drones in there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Especially on, I've always been told I like druggy music. I don't know what that means, but yeah, this may fit into that. Do we want to try to tackle these lyrics?
I mean, to me, these are like Paul and Romans. You guys are probably familiar.
Mm-hmm.
The like, I do not understand what I do, but what I do not do, I do. All that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Where he's just struggling against what he wants. That's what this feels like to me.
Yeah.
He wants to do one thing and he can't do it, and that's guilt. You know.
Yeah, and there's a lot of guilt. And you know, so as you've mentioned, also it's probably a song about doing drugs because it definitely says I get high.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you know, and there's also the lyric here that says, and what you were just referencing, what I see, I don't want to be. Think of me, think I'd rather be I deserve everything that I got.
Yeah.
And then it goes into you, I know, you're the single thing I deny. And so when we get to later on in the song, when it's very clear that I get high, I get high, I get high, I get high, so it seems like someone's doing drugs, doesn't want to be, but is the reason he doesn't want to be doing drugs because it's hurting him somehow, or just because he feels guilty about it? Because to me, it just seems he just feels guilty about it because he doesn't think that God wants him to do drugs.
I can see
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, that seems about right. I mean, that's like, 90% of Christianity back then felt like, I'm not doing the right thing. Like,
Yeah.
I got to fix my life, and
Agreed with that. Church was way more a list of things that you weren't doing correctly than anything else.
Which has always been bizarre to me that, like, so many churches, not every church, I
Right.
realize, or whatever, but it's always been such an emphasis on feeling guilty about doing the wrong thing and not measuring up. And yet the whole premise of salvation is that you're forgiven and that you don't have to feel guilt.
Mhm.
But yet here you should still keep feeling guilty just in case,
Yes.
You're forgiven,
Because if-
but still feel that guilt,
Yeah,
Because if you didn't, you might get high
right.
and you might enjoy it.
You might do the wrong thing. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and-
Sometime it would be really fun for you guys to talk directly with some of these artists that we don't know at all about. And then to be like, dude, I was not even talking about that. I was talking about sailing. What do you guys?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
if we can find Blake, I would love to talk to Blake about this album. It's
That would be amazing.
Yeah. I mean, he's not hard to find, but I think Jay found him. But if we could actually talk to him, that would be very interesting. And building on that topic, it's very interesting that churches give you all these reasons to feel bad, and they're like, then they turn around and they're like, if you don't feel the love of God in here right now, then you must not be saved. You're like, no, I just feel guilt. What? Like,
There's nothing like the 180 turn that they do when they're doing like an altar call. I can't tell you how many times I've sat here and I'm like, wait, you just did this whole thing and now you're trying to do like a salvation pitch, and you just guilt tripped everyone in the room. I don't know.
It's almost.
I don't like that presentation.
It's almost gaslighting. Like it's a little abusive, to be honest. Yeah. So there is the line I want to talk. The line in this song I want to talk about is "I deserve everything that I got." Now maybe he's talking about something that went poorly, but as far as the song presents, I think he's got drugs. And did he deserve the drugs to get high with, like as a good thing? That's where I'm coming from. I deserved all those drugs and I enjoyed them. Like,
Yeah, I don't
Could
know.
be.
I have a feeling that's not it,
no,
just based on the context and everything else. But maybe.
so much regret in this album.
Definitely that. It's very possible it's more like the consequences of having done drugs that he deserves.
Yes.
I'm guessing, but
He got arrested.
That's just-
Yeah, busted on charges. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's move to a song that maybe isn't about regrets. Although Phil, I glanced at your notes and you found a way to put regret in here. So let's.
This is all just guessing again, but
All right, I remain yours.
Yeah, I love the opening of this song. That
Mhm.
like guitar picking bit. It's real chill. Oh, and then the chorus. I love this song. It's a great song.
Yeah. There's very heavily. There's a lot of arpeggiated guitar on this album, but this one is like the most heavily arpeggiated and just kind of constant flowing. The bass and the drums are kind of lighter on this one because the guitar is so heavy. And by heavy I mean constant, not distorted.
Yeah.
Hear the sounds that silence brings, utterance my heart doth sing for the words I
Which is another thing I listened to with Sunday Real Estate. Kind of one of the ways that Sunday Real Estate I think gets their more mysterious sound is they have more dirt, some more distortion on these arpeggiated guitar parts, and so you can't quite tell what's going on as well. And that I think that's something that Bloomsday does a little more clean, and we can hear what's going on, and so it doesn't give it quite the same emotional impact, I think.
I do like the background vocals on this song
Mhm.
though. Like I don't know. I'm not sure how much more there's been previous, but
None.
It's the first time that
This is
really stood out to me.
First time there's background vocals on this whole album. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I noted that as well. First
Yeah.
time. Yep.
Come to me near, nothing to fear inside. Love do I see, where will be tonight? Come to me near, nothing to fear.
It's very affirming for me to like have written this down, and then you guys like saw it too, and I'm like, okay, I'm not crazy. That's good.
No. Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah. Which was part of my note because I did the songs in reverse order. And so when I said earlier that they need another guitarist, one of the other notes I made was because they need more background vocals.
I like the laws though in this one.
Yeah.
The like la la la. Well, I can't do it.
Yeah, it's really the first time we get vocals that aren't lyrics on this album.
Yeah.
There's a pretty gruff guitar on the chorus here on this song.
Mind in motion, circles around and around. You hold me.
Now, while we're listening to this part right here, I want to make a in circles. Yeah.
Okay, I could kind of see that. Yeah.
I don't know.
I could never figure out what he was saying on this chorus, by the way. Like,
No.
you guys had revolving written down, and I thought, you hold me, you told me.
That
was
I
my
don't
best
know.
guess
It's
there,
really
yeah.
hard to make it out.
I think it is revolving.
'Cause he said circles earlier. That's what tied that together for me. But
Right. But then the second line, I don't know what the second line is in
Yeah.
the chorus.
it's tough.
This song, though, even though I don't know what he's saying on the chorus, I feel like it has more of a memorable chorus than
Mhm.
some of the other songs. Like, this one kind of,
Yeah.
was more of an earworm for me, even though I was still like, what's he saying? Yeah.
So it's the part to me that sounded like, I mean, he's saying like, I'm sorry. He definitely says, I'm sorry, at least in there. And then he says, come to me near, nothing to fear. And then there's one point, love, I will see you soon tonight. Or will you, something like that? I don't know.
Yeah.
I thought maybe it was about like longing for another person, but
I think it's more just like the person is separated from someone they love, maybe just by distance or something like that. I especially like the second or third verse is memory is all I have, far away it seems so sad. But then back to the second verse, sit alone and think of you, the thoughts alone they never do. I really like that.
could be someone that passed away too, There's definitely
be,
some loss
yeah.
feeling in there.
The chorus parts where it says, come to me, nothing to fear inside. Love do I see? Oh, will you be tonight? Or where will you be tonight? I don't know. I feel like he's saying, I wish you were here tonight. So I don't know. I like your little notes here where you said sweet acoustic-y solo.
And I love that like falsetto note he hits like at the very end of it there. There's a
Mhm.
little bit of falsetto throughout the album, and I think he pulls it off nicely.
Memories all I have, far away. It seems so sad. Your eyes, they long for me. When will it come to me again?
So we're going to skip soft even though I really like it, it's a short song. It's even pretty Jesus-y, but I still like it. It's a nice little song. And move on to Wait, the last song on the album.
This is my second favorite song, easily.
Yeah.
It does not feel... When I saw it was 11 minutes, I'm like, wait, really? And it doesn't feel like 11 minutes. I have no problem sitting through it, and the different movements bring you through it, like, easy.
Yeah, and as I said, it really does feel like it has movements to it where the song kind of breaks and does different things, and there's some nice noodling, I think, in this song. It never feels like noodling annoys me, and it never feels like noodling here. But it still has that kind of like very loose feel to it. The whole song is.
But each part feels purposeful, though. I don't think it's just like jamming, you know.
Yeah, and this is another song where I think the bass is really spectacular. And let me play a little bit of here. Once again, some Sunday Real Estate vibes there. But what I like about the bass there is it seems like somebody is just like fumbling around with the bass and accidentally doing the right thing. And then like loses their confidence and let it just kind of like grooves, like just the bass kind of disappears for a moment, you know. And really the whole song has that kind of like I said, like this really loose feel to it, which it kind of, one of my favorite things that I identified that I like about songs a long time ago is I like songs that always feel like they're going to fall apart. And this song always feels like it's about to fall apart. for 11 and some odd minutes.
Yes.
Yeah, 11 minutes and 18 seconds, it feels like it's going to fall apart.
I do feel like the mix on this song is I think it's the best mix, like the actual mix of the song. It feels like that opening bit, especially when you got the guitar and the bass, it feels like an open space. It's not all mushed together, and I really, really like the mix on it. Sounds real good in headphones, you know.
See the light, see the way. Choose my path, choose the day.
He has some more dirt on his guitar there as he's doing the arpeggiated thing, and so it gives it more of like a little mystique feel to it. I mean, and the guitar tone through this entire song is just magnificent, and it goes into a lot of different places. But once again, we get a very Jeremy Enoch-y, need your love, need it in me. Let me see if I can find that part. Dissonance there.
Yeah.
A lot of dissonance in this song. Yeah.
This tom's kicking in there. Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the drum mixing on this one is really superb. What we go into now is a Phil had labeled in his notes, because I copied them over mine because it's so hilarious. Can you read the one that says dissonance song fades?
Yes. Let me see here.
This is great.
I said dissonance, song fades. There's a long bit over the drums. Sounds like it's coming to a close. Psych, they return to the king dust. There's like 5 different endings to this song.
Yes.
You're like, oh, here's the end of the song. Nope, it's going again. Here's the next part. love the Return of the King too. I'm okay with long stuff. You know?
Yeah, me too. Yeah, several endings is fine. But there's also these really like when we get into that weird breakdown that goes for another 5 minutes.
Yeah.
There's these weird like really hollow sounding crash cymbal here. The guitar is just doing, I don't know what, in the background. Mostly atonal, but it a little bit works. Those drums just...
It's almost like a drum solo, right?
Yeah.
Right.
That really hollow, like, crash cymbal.
Yeah.
Because usually a crash cymbal should, like, fill things up and be very wall of soundy, but that one's just, like, it starts off that way, but then it just ends so soon. And I don't think he's muting. It's not a muting sound there, unless he's being very careful about it. And I don't think he has that many hands.
Almost sounds like it's got a crack in it.
Yeah, you're right. It does. And they make cymbals like that on purpose.
That part too, by the way, where it's just sort of the, atonal guitars and the drums up, that's a little over 3 minutes solid. That's a whole song's worth of just that bit.
But it works just fine.
I love it.
And then at the end, as you mentioned, we finally get our towering guitars. And once again, there's that fuzzed out guitar in the background. We're literally just listening to speakers that are being overdriven. They're not doing anything except for making a crackling sound.
And some of those guitar parts of that last bit are almost like in the hardcore realm, the way that they're, it's such a good, whole long build up. I know you guys are familiar with Starflyer, dual overhead cam, when it's like the super long, like da, 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 and it's just this ridiculously long build up, and then it crashes in. There's nothing like that. I love that feeling of just this huge build up that's ridiculous, and then when it finally pays off, it's a good song.
Yeah, and this one does kind of bring in that a little bit of grind, a little bit of like shoegaze sound, where it's like this filtered hardcore sound, right? Where they take hardcore elements, but it never gets into hardcore, like. Yeah, and that's actually it's funny, that's one of my notes later on is that there are hardcore elements in here, but we never get into the realm of feeling like it's overly hard or overly dark because it's hardcore or anything like that. It's just like these hardcore elements are just sitting in the background.
It's a good song.
Jay, anything to add to that song?
I mean, you guys pretty well covered it. I'm going to disagree and say it's a little jammy for me at points. I like that they were willing to do that on the last one and just go all out and make it long. I was kind of like, okay, like fast forwarding a little bit, but different people like different things. So I did like how the chorus came back at the very end and tied it all together, and then it ended.
I wouldn't want a whole album of 11-minute songs like that, but for a closer, it totally works for me. Like
fair.
I remember a friend of mine coming up to me in high school, in the corridors of high school, and saying to me, "Hey, I got a new Smashing Pumpkins EP that's just like them like noodling around and jamming. Do you want to come over and listen to that?" It's like, no, that sounds horrible. But that's not how this feels though. As much as it has a looseness to it, it still all feels very purposeful.
Yeah,
I think.
I do too. And I think if you could stick at different points, like a track, where it would start a new track number, and maybe it would help break it up and make it feel more, palatable for you, Jay. I don't know, maybe.
Okay, fair. All right.
All right, Phil. So, what are your overall thoughts on this album? How does it come off?
I mean, I've probably been playing my cards a little close to the chest, but I really like this album a lot.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's great. To me, I mean, it very much still sounds like the 90s. I wouldn't try to trick someone that this just came out. Like, hey, listen to this new album that just came out in 2021. But I love the 90s.
There's some pretty 90s. There's some pretty 90s sounding stuff coming out right now, but
I think it's more like people making a reference back to the 90s
Yes.
than like actual, yeah. Kind of like how the 50s were real popular in the 80s. Like that's where we're
Yes.
at now, you know, which is
you are correct.
which is weird for me, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me too.
and I never would have thought the 90s had a sound when we were in the 90s. Like it just was music now.
Right.
And I remember this conversation with my wife where I'm like, no, it's not like the 50s or 60s or 80s or something where you could like instantly recognize it. And then she plays me some samples and I'm like, oh yeah, that definitely sounds like the 90s. Okay. You're right.
Yep.
I remember playing some weird Pixies song for my wife once, and I was like, when do you think this is from? She's like, I don't know, 91. I was like, crap.
Yep. Not fooling anyone. Still great though.
Yeah. Jay, what are your overall thoughts?
Yeah, I wish I had checked this out more at the time, because I do like it quite a bit, and I'm not sure why I didn't notice it more than, other than like 96, tons of stuff was coming out
Yeah,
in the Christian
that was a big
scene,
year.
and I probably just like could not keep up. But yeah, I enjoyed it quite a bit too. Yeah, I'll stop there. It's good. Like, it's not, sometimes we listen to this stuff, even we've had a few recent episodes where I love the music, but I go back and dig through the lyrics and I was like, yikes. This one, other than that one word master in it, for the most part, like, I really like, lyrically I'm okay with, musically I'm okay with, like, yeah, it's good. And then I hope we cover this in our episode. I listened to a little bit of their EP after this and I really like that. I think they kind of kept evolving as a band. This is good. I give it a stamp of approval.
Especially the albums that we cover, there's not a lot of stuff that we talk about that I would consider a work of art. But I would say this album is a work of art, more in the purpose behind it. Like there's a very obvious vision here, and I think that they pulled it off. I think that there's still, it's derivative of Sunday Day Real Estate. Sure, fine, right? I don't think that's too negative because Sunday Real Estate was a game changer, honestly. And they're also these guys are from Seattle, where they're going to be, hearing Sunday Real Estate a lot because they were blowing up the scene at the time. And I think in a way, like I said, the Day the Colors Died, the song, in a little bit kills this album because you listen to that song and then you're expecting more of that, but there's not more of that. It's this excellent song, but then they change directions so thoroughly and so hard that you don't know what to do with the rest of the album. At least that's where I was in the 90s as a kid. I didn't know what to do with the rest of this album. Also, probably the rest of this album's probably a little too mature for me when I found it, both musically and lyrically, I would say. But yeah, so I think if you take that song off, this album stands on its own. And I think it's really good. I think it still lacks something. I think it lacks some defining moments. I think as we've touched on, there's that they're holding back too much of like the rocking guitar thing. But I had the same feeling when we did Quell, that I really liked that album, but it lacked those defining moments that really set it apart from everything else. But yeah, I really liked it. I want to look at what some other people thought of this at the time. There was an HM review and a 7-Ball review, but I don't have those and I couldn't find them. But the only review I could find at the time was from Cross Rhythms, and they honestly seem. It's only one paragraph, and it's a pretty short paragraph, and it seems a little bit dismissive. Here, it starts like this. Another young alternative band hailing from Seattle vie for the attention of with this release. And then they go on to say, my favorite track would have to be Just the Same.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
That tells you a little about the reviewer there, I think.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So Cross Rhythms, you really fell on that one. I understand there's a lot of albums out there, especially 96, but you missed it here as well. As did Jay and I, but yeah.
True.
I think it says something that you would confuse it with a really popular band at the time in their local scene, because a lot of Christian music, as you guys are aware of, is not known for being like super contemporary. So just say like, oh, they were totally fitting in with that scene and going after, like, that's actually a step up for a lot,
It is a step up for a lot of Christian music. You are correct. All right, we've already touched on the artwork here a little bit, but I will say that easily this album caught my attention from across the room. Like I saw this on a bookshelf and I listened to it. Once again, I was lost with it, but I did the artwork did draw me to this album.
Definitely, it stood out against anything else. I still don't know. I don't know if those are Tums or if that's like an actual drug or is it aspirin? I don't know, but
they look like aspirin,
probably. But then the ones inside, those are different pills on the CD and stuff. So that was just something that, I don't know what this is, but I have a feeling it's not going to be another like pop. This is not Twilight Paris, in that genre. So I think I'm good.
Yes, very true.
I love the cover and the layout. If I had to critique something, though, I don't love the font.
Okay.
Just saying.
90s fonts are easy to hate.
Yeah, it's very 90s. 90s trying to do a throwback to like maybe the 70s or something, right?
Yeah, I can see that.
All right, any closing thoughts on the album before we go on to Where Are They Now?
I think they're really talented, also.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like you don't just have like a guy strumming a GCD chord and I can like sit and noodle around on my acoustic guitar. There's a lot of thought and complicated parts put into it. I don't know musically as much as you do, but to me, they feel like they're pretty talented overall.
No, yeah. That if they had another guitarist and they could add that extra layer to this they have a lot of things going on here. Yeah. We should probably also mention that this was recorded. This was produced by Aaron Sprinkle.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, executive produced by Gene Eugene because it's on his label, Brainstorm Artists International.
And Andy Prickett of the Prayer Chain was involved in some of the behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah, he did one of the songs, I Remain Yours.
Well, Phil, why don't you tell us what you found out about where these guys are now?
All right. Well, as Jay mentioned, they did follow this up with one EP on Velvet Blue Music, which is fantastic. And incidentally, still available to purchase from the Velvet Blue Music website, I saw on CD. So if you're interested, I think it's like $5 or something, $6.
Oh, wow.
So that's pretty cool.
Okay.
Blake Wescott was the only credited musician on that, but Mike, who was the drummer, on his current Facebook page mentioned having released that, so he was involved. So who knows? Because those liner notes are even more vague than these here. So who knows who was on that?
Oh, good.
Blake Wescott was involved in tons and tons of bands. You mentioned him playing with Pedro the Lion in various forms. He did a band called Saltine, which I have one of their CDs. Very, very cool. If you like this, you'll probably like that too, He was involved in Kush earlier on. I don't know if you guys know Kush. I love them.
Yeah.
That's like the super band of all super bands for like
right.
the Christian fringe type of musicians.
Yes.
Did you ever see them play live at all?
I think I did at Cornerstone one year, but that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They definitely didn't come to Texas.
They played a bunch around Southern California, so I was kind of spoiled with that. But so I don't know. Like, I never saw Bloomsday play, but I saw Pedro the Lion a ton around this time. I saw Kush several times. I don't remember, honestly, if he was involved in any of those live events I was at, but it's possible.
Yeah.
I might have seen him there. I don't know.
Yeah.
I saw Blake play with Dave Vazan on the Curse Your Branches tour, because he played with him live on that tour, and I remember, for some reason I remembered the name when he said it. So I have seen Blake live, but never with this band. Yeah. I don't think this band maybe played that much live. I don't know.
I mean, I think their existence was like a year and a half, 2 years, something like that.
Right.
At most. But he's been involved in a lot of stuff also, as far as like production and recording. He, for a while, he owned Casa Recording Company, which I think he took over from Damien Jurado. They released like cassette only releases and stuff. He's done a lot, and he's probably still doing things now, apparently.
Jay, why don't you tell us a little bit about, I didn't know this. Jay, tell us a little bit about Casa real fast.
Yeah, so I think Casa started is Damien Jurado and Eben, I don't know how to say his last name, Haas from Blenderhead, did like tape recordings. Like everything was on tape, and a lot of times it was like recycled tapes that they got from like thrift stores and just recorded stuff over. And they put out a bunch of stuff, like a Roadside Monument live kind of thing, I think recorded off the radio, like a bunch of kind of just bootleg stuff, a bunch of Damien's like really early stuff that's just like him and an acoustic guitar. I think the first Coolidge stuff was on that, and then somehow over the time I think Blake took it over and made it more of like a real thing. And then I don't know when he stopped doing that and started producing, but I'm just looking at Discogs right now, and he's got like 4 pages worth of stuff he's like contributed to, either as recording or playing instruments. So he's done, and I think you're right, he does a lot of like, if you like this, you'll probably like that. Like lots of Damien Jurado, Dave Bazan, even some Aaron Sprinkle stuff. Like
After Bloomsday, Steve Leslie, he moved to Bellingham, Washington. His goal was to get away from the music scene and to finish his degree, but he almost immediately started a band called Chuckanut Drive. that went from 1999 through the early 2000s. It was a country band.
It's very country.
Yeah. Never heard it.
I mean, I didn't hear it until this, but it is.
Okay. Oh, you found something to listen to? I couldn't find actually an actual song to listen to.
Yeah, they still have like an active Facebook, or he has an active Facebook page.
Right.
And then there was just a couple of YouTube videos I was able to dig up. There's an actual road called that, so it was kind of confusing. But
right, yes, a little bit hard.
Some songs popped up, yeah.
Yeah, and to this day, or at least before the pandemic, he continued a solo career as a local musician in Bellingham, going by the name Stephen Ray Leslie. And as Phil mentioned, you can find him on Facebook under that name.
He also had a band in the middle called The Crooked Mile between Chuck and Nut Drive and doing a solo.
That's true, yes.
I'm just going to add one more thing that I found. I did find Blake on LinkedIn, and according to LinkedIn, he now lives in Arizona and works for the American Board of Radiology. There we go. Okay. It's the same Blake, because he credits, album recording before, but I think since about 2014, he's been doing that. My big thing is he seemed to, basically from this band, and I know he did Saltine and a couple others, but really after this, there was no like Blake Wescott music. Like he was involved in a ton of stuff, but I didn't see anything like primary songwriter or singer or anything. But come on, a guy like this who plays this much music, surely he's got songs somewhere, right? Like, I feel like he's got to have something he's been working on.
I would hope so.
Then. So, would love to hear it if anybody knows where it is. Blake, if you ever hear this, we'd love to hear it. I'm sure there's got to be at least a few songs he's written since the Bloomsday days that, deserve to be heard.
He was involved with Casa Recordings put out a couple albums by Sarah Shannon, who was the former lead singer of another band, I forget what it was, Velocity Girl. And he was very heavily involved in writing and producing that album. So, but yeah, you're right. There's no him original material, which is very disappointing. I agree.
Well, then also, I don't know if you found Mike Bravine, the drummer, is also still an active musician.
Oh, really?
Out of Knoxville, Tennessee. He's got a Facebook page, facebook.com/Mike Bravine, just like it is in there. And he does, I don't know, drums still.
Any other final thoughts before we bid you adieu, Phil?
Well, you guys are going to do the award? I didn't.
Oh, the award. Sorry. That. Yeah, you're right. Sorry. Let's go there.
I want to get to do an award. It's the fun part at the end,
Phil, do you have an award for this album?
I do. This one I called the Day the Mystery Died Award, a.k.a. the Enya Award.
Enya?
Okay, here's the explanation. Because this album is always just this enigmatic mystery to me, and looking closer at the lyrics, some of them great, turned out fine, but there's definitely some moments that I found to be a bit cheesy or whatever that, I wish I didn't know. I wish that was still mysterious, right? And the reason I say the Enya Award is because I don't know how much you listen to Enya, but it's always just been this very mysterious European-y sounding thing, and she's saying, other languages or something, but it's not. Her lyrics are in English. And there's that one song that Sail Away, Sail Away. I don't know if you've heard that.
Yep.
It's really pretty. Don't get me wrong, but the lyrics, when you look at them in English, are so cheesy. It's the worst. And I can't listen to it anymore and not think this is the dumbest lyric ever. And it still sounds real pretty. And I think of that every time I look closely at an album that I wish I didn't. So
yeah, right. My only familiarity with Enya is through Adam and His Package. So
that's been a little bit of maybe the curse of this show. Is some of these albums were I wish I hadn't dug these. Some we like more, but yeah.
I don't think this one is that bad, but any mystery that is that evaporates from this is a bummer.
Yeah,
true.
It's there's good and bad things to say about both sides of the mystery. Before while you're in the mystery is great, but it's far enough in the past that I think that the destroying the mystique is fine now.
Yep.
Although I will say that I started a blog that I never published or anything like that before we did this. We started the podcast, and we just did the 121 episode. And that was probably when I was doing the blog, that was my biggest disappointment, was just coming across how trite those lyrics were on that album. And I still love the album, but it was a huge disappointment to me, to the point that when I was writing it, I was like, screw it, I'm keeping my lyrics.
Well, I do think there's something to be said for the way a lyric is delivered. And you guys have touched on this, that even the most cheesy lines or whatever can be made to sound cool if it's delivered well. But still, when you look at it too closely. under a microscope, cracks start to appear.
Some things don't survive.
Yeah.
It's true.
I still love this album, though. Don't get me wrong.
No, it's good. I am glad you introduced us to it because I've really enjoyed getting to listen to it and dig into it. It's a lot of it's like I said, it is a work of art and it's so enjoyable.
I agree.
Well, Phil, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, guys.
Thank you for introducing us into the album again. And yeah, is there any way that any podcast that you do that maybe two of them that people should listen to?
Yes, I would love to plug two podcasts that I do. One is called The Mandarin Orange Show, spelled incorrectly on purpose, which is a show I do with my wife, just kind of a comedy, goofy thing we do together. We talk about pop culture and being parents and traveling and silly stuff. And you can find that at Mandarin Orange Show anywhere.com or on Facebook or whatever. Also, I do an episode by episode podcast about Family Ties, the 1980s show with Michael J. Fox, and that's called Alex P. Keaton is My Friend. That's easily Googleable as well, so you can find that. And then one more thing, if I could plug my indie record label, Pop Vox Music, we do a regular. This is probably gonna be the most interesting to listeners of your show. We do a regular live stream or semi-regular live stream with different artists from the era. And by the time this comes out, we'll have done our most upcoming one, but their videos are all available later. The record label is called Pop Vox Music, POPVOX Music. And you can find us on Facebook is the easiest place. That's where we do our live streams. We've had such artists from the era as John Sonnenberg from Travelogue / House of Wires and Miss Angie and a bunch of others like that. So check that out and come hang out with us there.
Well, thank you very much, Phil, and you have a good day.
Thank you.
All right, Jay, what are we listening to for our next episode?
Clifton, we're going to stay in the same year, 1996, but we're going to listen to Curious Fool's album Red. Or maybe that's Reed. I don't know. But R-E-A-D.
Yeah. The word that can be pronounced both ways. I think I should be embarrassed by this, but I don't remember. So
I don't think
we're going to find out.
I listened to the album before that. I don't think I ever listened to this. So we're going to find out together.
Well, we enter into this mystery that I've forgotten completely this album, and but I did listen to it at the time. I remember being very excited by it.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Your Music Saved Us.
If you enjoyed your time with us, please leave us a review or share this episode. Visit our website, yourmusicsavedus.com, to find out all the ways to listen. We're on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. Join our Facebook group or follow us to keep up with the latest or interact with us. Send complaints and disagreements to yourmusicsavedus@gmail.com.
The music in this episode is the work of Bloomsday and is used with apologies, not permission. And you should go and try to find Bloomsday to buy. We were told by Phil that you can still buy their EP at the Velvet Blue Music site. And, see if you can find anything else out there.
but you guys just were talking about Black Eyed Siva, and you were talking about the mysterious origins of them. And my first job when I was in high school, I was a sound technician at a Christian camp / conference center, and they were the house band one summer I was there before they were signed to 5 Minute Walk, and I got to run sound for them. They were like doing worship leading and concerts and stuff throughout the weeks. And anyway, it just, you guys are like, oh, nobody knows what they did. I'm like, no, before they were doing that. And so I was digging around for my old demo of them before they got signed, and I couldn't find it, but I did come across my Rainy Days demo from when I saw them back in the Rainy Days days. You can't see it because it's green, and I got the green screen.
It's green.
Well, trust me. Let's see. I can show you the black part there, and it says Rainy Days.
Yeah.
So